Is this happening to you? The King's Flame is probably the hardest boss you'll encounter this early on in Lies of P, and once you get past him, the game really starts to open up, so this is not the place where you want to get stuck. So if you're having trouble, have no fear, because with a little bit of timing and these simple strategies, we'll be able to get past the King's Flame with no problem. So let's dive in. Let's start by taking a quick look at the weapon and accessories I'll be using, and then I'll break down some of my keys to success. For my weapon, I'll be using the Greatsword of Fate Blade, upgraded to level 3, and the Salamander Dagger handle. Now I've tried a lot of different blade and weapon combinations for this fight, and I really like this one because not only does it give me good range, but it's also quick, and those are two things that are going to be key in this fight. But if you have a better weapon combination, please let me know in the comments below. I'll also have my Attribution Purification Ampule equipped, since the King's Flame has some pretty big flame and AoE attacks, especially in his second phase. I want to make sure I have these available just in case I get into trouble. And for accessories, I'll have the Workshop Union Standard Radiation Converter equipped, which will give me a bit of resistance against fire damage. Now let's take a look at a couple of my keys to success. Now I won't be using a Spectre in this fight. I did try it a few times, but ultimately decided that it was just easier to do it without it. It kept throwing off my timing for the block, didn't really last all that long, and just kept getting in the way. In general too, I would say not to use a Spectre the first couple times you go up against a boss, just because at this stage of the game, star fragments are finite resources, and you run the risk of running out. So you at least want to get down the flow of the boss fight before using the Spectre if you need help. Now this boss does also have two phases. The first is relatively straightforward, where he sticks to mostly melee attacks that can either be blocked or dodged. The second phase is where things get a little bit more tricky. He busts out some range attacks that we can counter by making sure that we're staying close and staying aggressive. This will limit his ability to use those ranged attacks, and if we time it right, can also give us a good window for us to deal some additional damage. He also has a really large AoE attack, and if we're not careful, this can deal some significant damage. We'll know he's about to do this attack because he'll drop down and look staggered, and the instinct there is to rush in and get in a couple of good hits, but we need to resist this urge. Now, the best way to combat this AoE is to either turn around and run away as far and as fast as we can, or we can also use these poles for protection, and these can also create a barrier for us as well for some of those ranged attacks. The King's Flame also has two Fury attacks. The first one I find is easier to just run away, and if we stay close to him, we can turn this into a good opportunity to get a heavy attack or a charged heavy attack. The second one I find is actually easier to block because it's pretty similar to one of the melee attacks that he uses regularly. And probably my biggest piece of advice for this boss, or any boss in the entire game, is to be patient. If you're a veteran of Souls-like games, then you'll know this tip well. But if you're new to the genre, then you'll quickly learn that there's no bigger way to get into trouble than by spamming the attack button. So for this fight, we need to limit our attacks to 1, 2, or maybe 3 hits if we time it just right. But we really need to resist the urge to rush in and try to get that 4th or 5th hit, because that's when we'll get in trouble. This boss has a ton of health, and our weapons at this point in the game aren't all that strong. So this fight is all about being patient, taking a deep breath, and looking for those perfect opportunities to deal damage. Okay, so a quick recap. We're not going to use any Spectres for this fight, but if you want to, be sure to at least have the timing of the boss down first. We also want to make sure that we're staying close and staying aggressive, especially in his second phase. We want to use the pipes as buffers when we can, especially against the large AoE attack and some of the ranged attacks. We need to watch out for the 2 Fury attacks, and most importantly, we need to make sure that we're patient and that we're only limiting our attacks to 1 or 2 hits at a time so we don't get into trouble. Now let's take a look at it in action. Now once you enter the boss area, you'll want to make sure to lock on as soon as possible and then get right up close to him. This first phase is all about these melee attacks, so you want to really work on the timing for the block. And you'll see that with the smaller handle on the dagger, I'm able to get 3 hits in, but still you just have to resist that urge to go in for an extra hit even though you really want to do it. And here I'm trying to use a combination of some of those heavy attacks as well as the light attacks. He does these sweeping attacks quite a bit. He'll do them from either the right or the left. He always seems to hit me whenever he comes from the right, like he did just there. And he's got another variation where he'll do it 3 times in a row and basically just spin around. But we're just trying to stay close and keep the pressure on. Block when we can, and just like that, we're able to get our first fatal attack in. And then make sure we're also just being patient, taking our time to heal when we can. And now he's going to come in for his first Fury attack. This is the one that I find is easier to just run out of the way, but I kind of try to stay right around behind him. And of course I missed there, but it's typically a really good chance to get a charged heavy attack in. I kind of needed a second here to regroup, so I backed up, took my health, watch for the sweep attack. There's the 3 times he does it. And then you kind of immediately go in, get a couple hits. Timing was definitely a little off here. Now one thing I did here, if you'll notice, is I used 2 health right away. That filled up my health bar all the way, and because your last health will regenerate based on how many times you hit the enemy, you want to start working on that refill right away. And here you can see his health is about halfway, he starts to stagger. This is how we know he's going into phase 2. He'll send out this large flame AoE, but you can hide behind these pipes, which I didn't realize until way too late. And then he'll start with these kind of ranged flame ball attacks. Again, we've seen this before, we know what to do there. And then this is his second Fury attack, which is kind of just a variation of another overhead slam he does earlier, like there. So as long as you've got the timing down there, that one's relatively easy to block. And we've seen these sweeps before as well, so we just want to kind of make sure that we're staying close to him and staying aggressive. Again, we've got the timing for that overhead slam down, so we're good there. And just getting as many hits in there as we can. Feels like we've kind of got him on the ropes. Use the Fable Arts. And then I take the opportunity here to use a charged heavy. We get our second fatal attack. But even still here, we just have to make sure to not get too greedy. So we back off a little bit. He starts shooting his fireballs, but we can just use this pipe to kind of act as a barrier. Now he drops back down to the ground here, so we know that big AoE attack is coming. So we want to hide behind the pipe. That has a really large range on it, so you want to make sure that you can hide behind the pipe. Then he'll shoot those tar balls out, so we want to make sure to steer clear of those. They will ignite if he shoots one of the fireballs on them as well. Here, I'm kind of backing off a little bit. I probably should have gone in a little bit closer, but I didn't want to get too greedy. I knew I had him right where I wanted him. Got a little lazy there, hit me with a couple fireballs, but we were able to recover. And then now that he's warming up for this charge attack, I know I can go in and get a couple of good hits in there. And really just trying to get that 1 or 2, maybe 3 hits in. Really fighting the urge to go in there and spam attack, because this is the time where you can really get into trouble and lose the fight. He gets me with that big swipe there and puts me on fire, but I'm really glad I've got my Purification Ampule equipped. I'm able to use that, put out the fire. And just like that, we are able to defeat the King's Flame Fuoco. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope this video has been helpful. If so, feel free to give this video a like and be sure to subscribe for even more Lies of P content coming in the future. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next one.